We will resolve the conflict within 20 minutes. This was the prediction that a psychologist made to a couple who decided to do a practical exercise during a workshop. The couple lived with a conflict defined by themselves as unresolvable for 39 years of marriage. But there is more. The psychologist said that in any conflict, the solution appears evident when a particular condition exists between the parties in conflict. Once this condition is achieved, the conflict disappears. He even says the conflict has no more reason to exist. What condition are we talking about? Hello everyone and welcome back for another video. Today we are talking about conflict resolution and how to resolve conflicts effectively and peacefully through nonviolent communication, a model developed by the psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, who I mentioned earlier. My name is Salvatore Beninato and I am a psychologist. At the beginning of 2019, I created this channel to add value through psychology in 3 languages to make it as inclusive as possible and using only a smartphone to record and edit. I hope this video is useful and interesting for you. If you like it, please share it. You will help this channel grow. If you have not yet subscribed, consider doing it. You can also click on the bell icon to stay up to date with my new publications. Right, let's get started. The example of the couple in conflict for 39 years was mentioned by Rosenberg during a workshop held in San Francisco in 2000, which I recommend you to take a look at. The full version is on YouTube. I will leave the link in the description box below. In this workshop, Rosenberg talks about this couple to whom he said, "We will resolve the conflict within 20 minutes. But he also said 20 minutes from the moment when both sides tell me what the other party needs. It is this empathetic connection between the two parties, the indispensable condition to resolve the conflict, which I was referring to at the beginning of this video. Rosenberg says that when this condition is attained, which means when each of the two parties in conflict listen to and understand the needs of the other without having heard any criticism or demand, starting from this moment, it will take even less than 20 minutes to resolve the conflict. This vignette encompasses much of the process of nonviolent communication applied to conflict resolution. However, this technique created by Rosenberg is not only a model, a communication tool, or a language. It is also a way of living which helps us move from a language of criticism, judgments, guilt and shame to a language of human needs. For this reason, it is defined by Rosenberg as a language of life, which is based on our natural predisposition to be compassionate and to empathize. A language of giving and receiving with the heart that can guide us towards a more complete and happy way of being in contact with ourselves and others. Why does all this sound so perfect? Can such an ideal communication model exist? Maybe that's why it's so difficult to apply. Rosenberg explains it very well when he says that the purpose of nonviolent communication is to help us to do what we already know, but we have forgotten. Why did we forget it? Because in the culture in which we grew up, we have not been educated in the direction of a communication connected to life. As children, we all naturally spoke this language of life, but were educated to forget it and we disconnected from our empathetic nature. According to Rosenberg, all violent strategies, which can be physical or verbal, are therefore behaviors that the dominant culture teaches and supports. Instead of showing our natural quality of giving and receiving, which is possible to experience in every relationship, or instead of playing the game of making life more beautiful, as Rosenberg says, we play the game of who is right, which is definitely a game where everyone loses. So our culture promotes what he calls the Jackal language, that cuts us out of life and makes violence easy. A language that does not help to create connections and does not serve our needs and values. This is the language that dominates our culture, the game of who is right, the Jackal language, which is mainly based on two factors. First, moralistic punishment. Human beings are bad and sometimes have to suffer to learn to be better in a world seen as right or wrong, good or bad, normal or abnormal. Second, our culture is based on a language that denies responsibility for our actions. How many times have you heard, "I had to do it, superiors' orders, company policy, I could not do otherwise, there are no alternatives"? So, when our needs are not being met, we have learned to transform them into labels, judgments or criticisms directed at others and at ourselves. This does not make it easy to understand each other, does it? What if we knew that every judgment, criticism or expression of anger we hear from others or give to others is, as Rosenberg says, a tragic expression of an unmet need? Well, a door begins to open towards understanding between human beings. In fact, nonviolent communication helps us find another way of communicating without resorting to humiliation, coercion or threat, which Rosenberg defines as giraffe language. Why giraffe? During workshops, he used sock puppets to make clear the difference between Jackal language and giraffe language. The giraffe as a symbol of non-violence and the heart language because it is the land animal with the biggest heart. The giraffe has also a long neck, therefore it has a wider vision. So, in giraffe language, unlike the jackal one, there is always an alternative and the goal is not to win or be right, but to enter into a mutual connection from heart to heart. How do you recognize the jackal and the giraffe language? Well, the jackal part of us uses judgments, criticisms and accusations that break the connection. When we turn it inwards, we judge and criticize ourselves, submitting. When we turn it outwards, we judge and blame others, attacking them. In giraffe, instead, communication happens with the intention of connecting to ourselves and to others, trying at every moment to detect our feelings and needs and those of the other person. Rosenberg used to say that every jackal is a giraffe with communication problems. That means that the two languages reside in everyone, but we only know the jackal one perfectly. Today we will learn the giraffe language. Nonviolent communication suggests alternating two phases: empathy and assertiveness, and focusing on four elements of the communication process, which are observation, feeling, need and request. The empathy phase is the profound and respectful listening to what is alive in others and in ourselves, which we alternate with assertiveness when we are able to honestly and authentically express ourselves. Take pen and paper and let's put it into practice. It is like learning another language. We are not used to it and it can take time to formulate even a sentence. So, four phases, right? We observe what happens, paying attention to our feelings and needs, and finally we formulate our request. Let's now try it together, step by step, starting with observation. First phase, observation. The first step is to observe and describe a situation objectively and without judgment. Think of someone who does something you don't like. Think of a specific action, a concrete, observable behavior that answers the simple question, what does this person do? To well understand how to practice observation, we must imagine that it is what a camera can record. Why this premise? As we have said, we usually think in terms of right, wrong, good, bad, normal, abnormal, appropriate, inappropriate, etc. And in doing so, we don't observe reality, we don't see it. All we see is just the image we have of that person and what he or she is doing. So we interpret, evaluate, judge, criticize, etc. rather than observe. For example, when we start by saying, I think that, we are evaluating, we are not observing. It is just an opinion. When we say, for example, he or she is closed in on herself because he or she is depressed, we are making a diagnosis, perhaps accurate, but still a diagnosis, not an observation. It is difficult to observe in general. Imagine during a conflict. Rosenberg used to quote Krishnamurti, who said, observing without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. Another example, my father blames my wife for my choices. Blaming is a judgment, an evaluation. The observation could be, my father says to my wife, you are responsible for all my son's choices. This is an observation that can be worked on. More examples. You are late. How can we observe this behavior without the other person feeling attacked? Well, we can say, we had an appointment at 8 o'clock, it is 8:30. For the next 4 phases, I will use this example. When I see dirty socks in the living room, this is the observation. Second phase, feeling. The second stage focuses on feelings. It is about formulating what you really feel in that situation, taking responsibility for your feelings. Also remember that the behavior of others can be the trigger for our feelings, but never the cause. In the next phase, we will see what the cause of feelings is. Imagine now talking directly to this person and expressing how you feel when he or she acts in the way described above. So let's say, when you do this, I feel sadness, for example. We don't say, you make me feel sad. We have already mentioned it, but let's repeat it because it is very useful in a situation of conflict to better understand ourselves and the other person. Remember always that every criticism, judgment, expression of anger is, according to Rosenberg, a tragic expression of unmet needs that reduce the likelihood of getting what we want and increase the probability of violence. Another clarification, also pay attention to the words that are more descriptions of what you think the other person is doing rather than feelings. For example, when you do this, I feel manipulated, judged, criticized, ignored, used, etc. These are all judgments and opinions, not feelings. Listen to your body to understand how you feel. And now my example, when I see dirty socks in the living room, I feel irritated. We don't say, you irritate me. Third phase, need. Now it is time to express our need, for example, the need for security, intimacy, rest, autonomy, etc. For Rosenberg, the cause of our feelings are our needs, and needs are universal for all human beings. We all have the same needs. This consideration allows a better understanding and acceptance of others. Let's continue the exercise. Now imagine talking to the person and expressing your reasons for feeling that way. You have to identify which of your needs has not been met. So, when you do this, I feel so because I need. The challenge here is to identify your need hidden behind your feeling, or better said, to connect our feeling with our need. Express your need without referring to the other person. For example, it is better to say, I need to be listened to while I am speaking. We don't say, I need you to listen to me while I speak. Do you notice the difference? And my example, when I see dirty socks in the living room, I feel irritated because I need more order in the house we are sharing. Fourth phase, request. Finally, the last step is to make a request, which must be a concrete and precise action. So, in relation to what the person has done, the feelings you have felt, and your needs that have remained unmet, imagine speaking directly to the person and making a request in this way. I would like you to. What do you want the other person to do to meet your needs? What specific action do we want this person to take? Here is an example. I would like you to wait for me until I finish speaking before you continue to speak. We do not say, I want to express myself, I need to talk, and you interrupt me, shut up. Remember that your request never comes alone. It is the last phase of the process: observation, feeling, need, and request. Now my example. When I see dirty socks in the living room, I feel irritated because I need more order in the house we are sharing. Could you please leave the socks in your room or put them in the washing machine? The request formulated like this promotes cooperation to provide a solution. In order for our request to be more effective, it is desirable that it refers to a positive action. What does that mean? We ask what we want the other person to do, not what we do not want the other person to do, because this could create confusion and resistance. Let me explain it with an example. I would like you to come home after work. Positive action. I don't want you to spend so much time at work. Negative action. And he or she signs up for swimming and goes swimming after work. Notice that the request has been respected. I don't want you to spend so much time at work. But your desire was also and above all that of having dinner and spending more time together with that person. After you make your request, always ask for feedback, because we want the other person to receive a request, not a demand from us. If he or she receives a demand, it would be better to know what the other person feels and needs in that situation and reformulate the entire sentence from the beginning. For example, could you please leave the socks in your room or put them in the washing machine? Would you please repeat what you heard me say? Even before you can ask for feedback, to ensure that there is an understanding and an empathetic connection. For example, I feel irritated because I need more order in the house we are sharing. Could you repeat it for me, please? And then make the request. If the other person perceives that by not fulfilling our request, he or she will be blamed or worse, punished, it means that he or she has not received a request, or we have not made one, because a request implies that the other person may not fulfill it and yet not be afraid of reproach or punishment. We look for an empathetic connection, and there are always alternatives to reach an agreement if we speak authentically and listen intently. Let's recap. Observe the situation without evaluating or judging. A simple observation has no comparison with the past. Identify your feelings. Feelings are always connected to your body and never involve others. Identify your need. A need always concerns yourself, not another person, and it is always a basic human quality. Finally, formulate your request in a positive way, speaking gently but firmly and clearly, without using unnecessary emotions such as sarcasm. So, even more simple: what do I see? What do I feel? What do I need? What do I request? We have learned the basics of non-violent communication that we can use starting from now. It is true that this tool helps us to move towards a new way of conceiving consensus, a consensus that respects the needs of both parties involved in the conflict, or dilemma as I like to call it. However, it is not a panacea to magically resolve conflicts, and perhaps it requires a radical change in us. A final reflection on what I believe is the current challenge and that of the future. After all, this is a channel about psychology at work, isn't it? So, just an open question: how can we create working organizations that surveys our well-being or a good life? That is, organizations that take into account all the needs of the people involved. Until next time.